Welcome back to Following Know It on a Stormlight podcast. This week is episode 139, and we are covering four chapters of The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. We're closing out part two. Elliot, how are you?
Excellent. Excellent. Excited to be learning more about our allomancing world of Mistborn.
Paul?
I'm awesome. At the time that you're hearing this, I don't actually know where we are in our release schedule versus recording schedule, but if you're listening right now, it's like, I don't know, a week or two until I get married, which is exciting. How cool. Or maybe I'm already married. I don't actually know what our schedule is like.
I
I
You're catching
don't
me on the
remember.
fly here. I think by next week's episode you will be married.
Thick. Okay. Cool. Nice. Okay. That's cool. Either way, it's getting close. So life has been uh, rather busy, but really awesome. So grateful to be here. Grateful to talk about Mistborn. And yeah.
Sounds good. Do you guys have two words to summarize episode 139? Elliot.
Kung Fu.
Okay. Paul?
Wow. Now I feel like I should just say like fighting. My two words are ramping intrigue.
Okay. Sounds good. Let's talk about Mistborn. All right, Elliot, would you be so kind as to give us a chapter summary for 13, 14, 15, and 16?
Sure. So our set of chapters, 13, starts out with Kelsier and Sazed and Vin just kind of debriefing from her first ball. Last episode, I think we saw her first ball that she went to, so they just kind of compare notes and see what they learned. Nothing too huge, I don't think, for this one. Kelsier then takes off rather quickly afterwards, and Vin follows and discovers that he's using an allomantic road to travel quickly to Luthadel. So she bounces along behind him on the allomantic road, which was pretty fun. Vin does catch up with Kelsier in Luthadel, and he says that he's going to the palace of the Lord Ruler, Craddock Shaw, and she insists on coming with him. She's very persuasive and stubborn, so Kelsier lets her come. Before letting her come, he does teach her about Atium and the powers that it can grant and the abilities that you gain when you burn Atium, which proved to be very useful. They head into the palace, they break in, they kill a lot of guards, and then they run into three Inquisitors waiting for them in the palace. And they fight and they get away just barely. Vin uses her Atium. Turns out the Inquisitor also has Atium as well, so they have a bit of a duel. And Vin is able to escape with the help of Sazed, who shows up and basically saves her from the Inquisitor. And that ends part two right there with Sazed coming to save the day. Part three starts off with Vin waking up after being in a 2 week coma. So she recovers. She's okay, but was out pretty hard for a bit there. Kelsier also survived. He shows up there. Random side note: we find out that Club's nephew, I forget what his name was, but we learn that he's been renamed. He's now called Spook
Spook.
for some reason. And I guess probably because his other name is really hard to pronounce, which I can't even remember or pronounce it. So Spook, I'll take it. And then let's see, last few bits here of chapter 16. Vin gets back under the guise of Lady Valette. They need to get her back out in society so people aren't too suspicious. We learn a little bit more about Sazed, not too much. Sazed does share at the very end that there is a common assumption that Kelsier's wife, Mare, is the one who betrayed him.
Yes.
Been keeping my eye out for who the betrayer might be. We at least now have an accusation of who the betrayer is. So, lot packed into a few chapters.
Sounds good. Something I want to highlight, the first thing I want to highlight, Elliot, you had a couple hypotheses, not necessarily predictions. I don't think you got that far on ATM, the state of ATM, and what ATM would be doing. Did it hit your expectations? Do you understand the implications? I don't even know if I understand the implications of and the description of ATM. What did you think of ATM?
It was not what I thought it was going to be at all. And this version is way cooler. All I was guessing before was that ATM was going to be some sort of destructive power, just because we saw Kelsier destroy a lot of things using ATM. Turns out it's not necessarily in and of itself explosive or destructive, but it's like basically the ability to see a little bit into the future. And when you are burning ATM and you see someone else or they're coming at you to fight you, you get these little images, like shadow images that go ahead of that person. So you can anticipate, you can see what they're going to do in the future, which is really cool and really powerful.
I'm
So
actually curious
I,
to ask Elliot, uh, what did you think ATM might be, and is this anything that you kind of, well, I'm assuming you couldn't really expect it. That's a pretty unique thing, but I'm just curious about what your thoughts are on ATM. Like, do you think it's cool? Do you think it's like a neat thing? Like, are you impressed? Are you just your general thoughts?
I I thought it was going to be something more straightforward, I guess.
Tangible?
Like, yeah, like I don't know, shooting lasers from your eyes, or I don't know, something
Mm-hmm.
physically destructive of,
Mm-hmm.
you're actually causing the damage with the power that ATM gives you. Or maybe like the ability to, I don't know, use friction to heat things up or something like that. Uh, went a completely different direction with it, which I love actually. I think this power is super cool, way more interesting than anything I could have thought of. The whole glimpse into the future thing. It does make things more complicated.
Yes. It was a couple episodes ago where Kelsier takes Vin out into the mist for the first time and they do their tutorial training and he shows her the 8 basic metals. And you made a comment and you were like, man, it's really complicated to be a Mistborn. You have all sorts of different things in your arsenal at any given time. And you're saying if a thief jumps out of an alley at you, you have to know what to burn at a specific time. You also have to turn your copper on first, like all these rules. Now, if you have ATM at your disposal, I feel like it the that changes these rules exponentially. If you have ATM to burn, now you see 100 different things of what they'll do in the future, especially if they have ATM, because then they're seeing what you're doing and you're seeing what they're doing, which changes. Yeah, it gets it gets crazy.
And even more so by the fact that apparently, unlike the other metals, you can't pre-ingest your ATM. If you if you eat it too soon, it'll degrade in your body. And so they carry the ATM physically with them and have to, shoot some pills real quick if they want to use it. So that's another thing you got to be thinking of, is when someone jumps out of an alley at you, you got to make a quick call. Is this a Mistborn? Is this a Misting? Is this just a regular thug? Do I need my ATM? Do I waste it now? Do I save it? Do I A lot of decisions have to be made really quickly if you're a Mistborn.
And now that you know what the function is once you burn it, any thoughts on where it's all going? We had the conversation of circulation of ATM. Any thoughts on what is happening to said ATM?
It's a great question. That's a really good question that I should have put more thought into, and I didn't, because we have this dilemma of only so much is being slowly allowed to flow out into circulation. What is he doing with the rest of it? The bland assumption is that he's just stockpiling it.
Right.
But I had some theories before that I don't know that that's the case. That it seems like we talk about this has been over thousands and thousands of years, or at least maybe a thousand.
1,000, yes.
What? Yeah, a thousand years of stockpiling ATM. You would need warehouses full of this stuff to keep it all. So I'm gonna guess it's being used up. If it gives you the power to see into the future, maybe maybe the Lord Ruler's just constantly burning it all the time, and that's a protection mechanism for him that he, is trying to make sure he doesn't get assassinated. So he just has a constant supply of it, perhaps. I don't know.
Would that maybe explain why the Inquisitors are already there?
It certainly could. If we're talking about predict the future kind of stuff, yes. It in some ways, Kelsier maybe should not be surprised that they can anticipate his moves
Right,
and be there before he is there. He just explained to Vin that about this magical power,
right.
and then he's surprised a little later when they're standing there waiting for him. Yeah, that's a good point.
I do not remember if that is the case or not. That's just where my brain is going. So whether I'm correct or not in the comment section, don't say that I'm spoiling it for him or not because I don't remember. So we will find out.
Yeah, one of the things that I was thinking with it, and like you're saying, I think the Atium has to be used for something. I don't think they're going to open a door to a warehouse and it's just stuffed full of Atium beads or something.
Mhm.
There's obviously going to be stashes or and whatnot that houses hold, but nothing like ridiculous. And the question is, yeah, what might they be using it for? I actually like the Lord Ruler idea. I could very well see it. It's like he's been stuffed full of ATM, or maybe he can enhance it to a higher degree and see farther into the future, or things like that, or see more like detailed things. I could fully see that being the case because we also just see it from Vin's perspective of like the first time burning it as well. I don't know if there's any like you can enhance with practice or things like that. Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
flaring
they kind of
ATM
do.
gets
But yeah,
weird. Like, what does that
is it like
do?
yeah? Do you get to like if you flare it, burn it like more at once? Do you like see further forward for a glimpse or
Right.
like what? So, anyways, I feel like there's still some questions to ask about it, but I was curious to know like what you thought about like the concept. I think it's super cool and really clever. I think that's one of the coolest things that Brandon Sanderson has included into this story, just because it makes things really, really crazy interesting. And I like the fact that even if you had someone who like is an inexperienced fighter, if you can see into the future, like you could basically be anything, like, and if you can and they can't, which is a really neat power.
I have another thought that just came to me, but I better save it for our Stormlight spoiler
I
section,
have I
which
have a Stormlight spoiler to talk about A Team as well, which we can
I
talk
don't.
about at
I
the end
feel
of the
left out.
episode. And I bet it's the same one Elliot had.
nah, maybe.
All right. So Kelsier says to Vin at the top of this roof. First, Kelsier actually goes after Vin's debrief and saying, I met Elend Venture. He actually goes to the Venture Keep first. And that's where Vin finds Elend, is in Luthadel spying on the Venture Keep. And she kind of has a panic moment of, wait, why is he here? Is he going to burn down this keep too? Like what are we doing here? And then he, I guess, loses interest and goes over to Creedic Shaw, and that's where she confronts him, or he confronts her, one of the two. And then he gives her the brief synopsis of, well, they can't know we're coming because I didn't even know we were coming. So now that we're here, let's just pop our head in real quick and see what we can find. And there's no way anybody could have betrayed us because nobody else knows. So they run into Creedic Shaw, run around for a little bit. They find a book on an altar, and then they find like a vault that they can't get through. An Inquisitor sitting there. The Inquisitor seems fairly uninterested. Like this was all part of the plan. Like he's just here guarding. He doesn't really care about the Mistborns. They're more of an inconvenience than anything. Except he does ask Vin a question as he's chasing her. Anyone catch what he asks her?
Is it the tell me who spawned you so I can go punish them, basically?
Yes. The thing that the Inquisitor is interested in is actually Vin's father, not necessarily Vin herself. He assumes, I guess, that he's about to kill Vin and doesn't care about Vin at the moment, but he does want to know who her father is so that he can go, you know, inquire, shall we say?
Inquisitum, yes. So he
Inquisit.
can go Yeah, he just wants to talk. I'm sure.
Yes, exactly. So
Just wants to meet. Maybe he's interested in asking her out and wants to ask for his
ask
blessing
her, yeah,
first.
for
Yes.
her father's permission. Sure.
My
Gonna
apologies
go
to everyone
inquire.
listening, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Yes, inquire her.
So I did think that was interesting. I picked that up, that the Inquisitor is genuinely interested and doesn't know who her father is, and that's where his priorities are. So did you guys catch that as well? Note that as notable.
I noted
I
it as, you know, not too notable, honestly, because it's fairly consistent, right? We've already known that they're all the way back to the prologue. They're very particular about the genetics of it all and
Yeah.
protecting the bloodlines and not letting the powers get where they shouldn't be. So seemed consistent with their motives.
actually did note it down more intentionally, um, which is funny because I didn't remember it whenever you asked. But it shows that there is some kind of other motive beyond just Alamancer's bad, kill Alamancer. You
Right.
know, um, and stuff. Something like deeper, something more of a master plan potentially, um, which might still just be Alamancer's bad, kill Alamancer, but like find the root cause, not the fruit, I guess.
Sazed then comes in to save the day. And we can talk about how and why and what is all going on here in a second. But we get this from Vin's perspective at the end of chapter 14 and into chapter 15. Well, chapter 15 is not Vin's perspective because she's unconscious. But at the very end of chapter 14, Sazed walks up. She doesn't know it's Sazed, and there's a one specific line descriptor on that will maybe key us in on what exactly happened. She says she hears, quote, hears a sound like shattering branches, unquote. And then she sees Sazed, like, pick her up. And the Inquisitor was, like, right there about to kill her, and she was about to lose consciousness, and all of a sudden Sazed's right there. What happened? Elliot, do you know what happened?
Do I know what happened? I have no idea what happened. I do really. So when I first read this, I read it as a metaphor, as Seiza did something very powerful, like crush this Inquisitor somehow, and that this is just Vin's metaphor of the sound that she's hearing. It was like shattered branches.
Right.
But then when I was reading it a second time, I was like, you know what? What if this is literal? What if this is Sazed like threw an entire tree at this guy, and they're on top of the building, and Sazed somehow lifted an entire tree with magical powers up on top of the building and like smashed the Inquisitor with it, and it literally was just like shattering branches everywhere. Probably not, but that'd be cool.
No,
We
we
didn't
haven't really seen any like magic. I mean, there's the magic of shooting coins, I guess, but not like anything not metallic.
Wouldn't be too hard to wrap a metal band around the trunk of a tree, and then you can throw it around wherever you want.
That is also very true. That's
true.
a good point I did not think of.
It I mean, if he's an Alamancer, but I think we're approaching this the incorrect way, just like Vin is, because he denies that he's an Alamancer at the beginning of part 3 in chapter 16,
Yep.
which we'll get to in a second, because he drops a couple titles or descriptors about himself just offhand and then refuses to elaborate. So we'll get there in a second. But well, what else did we get but at the end of part 2 besides Sazed magical powers?
I want to take a step further back, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Back to chapter 13. Um, so this is when Kelsier and Ven are talking. This is like quite a step back. Kelsier and Ven are talking, and they're talking about like House Venture. This is before I believe it's before he goes over to
Mm-hmm.
over there or anything.
To be a creeper,
And
yeah.
yes. So Eliot had put in the outline that Elend says, or sorry, Kelsier says Elend is not an Alamancer, which would break his theory. And I just wanted to say that I noticed this as well, and I thought it would just reading it from this perspective. I thought that was not an odd thing, but like we don't fully know that Kelsier knows that, right? Like he talks about the snapping point, right, of an Allomancer, of this, like, whenever you are like really faced with like serious like traumatic moment, maybe triggering your like fight or flight reflexes and things like that. That's usually when people discover their Allomancers, because they will react and use Allomancy like that, and kind of a snapping point. And he talks about how he experienced that in the pits of Hath Sin. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Or and stuff. And so he's saying that Elend is not an Allomancer because he had a near-death experience years prior with like an attack of House Venture, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's not an Allomancer. But that didn't seem convincing to me as a reader. Like it seems convincing. Like that's a convincing point, but that is still hearsay. That is still like,
Sure.
yeah, he broke in and Elend could have died, like almost died, you know. Therefore, and no one saw him use Allomancy, therefore he's not an Allomancer. But I'm thinking of the ways that you can use Allomancy that may not have done anything in that scenario. Like, could he be a smoker or something more like laid back, you know? Like, he obviously wasn't, like, if he was a, what's it called? Um, a pewter burner. I can't think of the term. I keep thinking like a
Thug.
brute or yes, a thug. That's right. If he was a thug, then yeah, like he would have used pewter to either save himself, run, or fight back. You know, things like that. Like, could he be an Allomancer that's just not so noticeable
Not an
or something
important
like that?
Allomancer, is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, is he an unimportant
A boring
Allomancer
one?
instead of a
Yeah.
really cool one? Is
Yeah.
he a really lame Allomancer that Elend just doesn't care about? And he's like, not even worth being an Allomancer at that point.
I completely agree with you, Paul. It's it's a piece of evidence that Elend was apparently in danger and did not use any powers. But I'm still not even convinced that that makes him like not a Mistborn. Like that is still my theory, is I think he could still easily be a full-on Mistborn. Again, mainly pointing back to the whole like air of nonchalance that he has, of he doesn't really care about him. That often comes from a place of power. If you're more powerful than everyone around you, then you don't often care about what's around you, because why would you? You're a step above.
Is a good point. I feel like to answer this question more clearly, though, it is speculation because we don't really see or hear a lot about the events. We're just told he almost died or something years past. So if it's like he was really like he is going to die unless he flares pewter or something else right now, or is it just like he broke in and had to run for his, like someone broke into their home and he had to run for his life, kind of thing? Like, you know, there's a lot of levels that could be there, I guess, and I'd be curious to know what. But anyways, that's what I wanted to take a step back and I was curious to see what y'all thought.
Actually reminded me of something else that I wanted to talk about. So I'm glad you brought it up. That has to do with having other people reveal their powers at a specific time. We run around Creedic Shaw for a little bit and get chased by some Inquisitors, right? And up until now, we've been told that all Inquisitors are seekers, right? So all Inquisitors can find burning Allomancy and track them down. And that's either why they're recruited or a byproduct of their recruitment or something like that. Don't even know if like they're human or whatever. But I think we kind of glossed over an important fact in this chapter. The Inquisitor that Vin fights mirrors her Atium and burns Atium. Does that not mean that he's more than a seeker?
Right? There's more evidence as well, because the Inquisitor that's coming after Vin picks up a bowl of like metal, almost like throwing stars, and he throws them at her. I think, it's pretty, yeah, because
Doesn't he yank on the coin bag that she's using to tether herself down the hallway? Or
yes,
someone does.
yes, there is yanking, pushing and pulling. There's pushing and pulling going on in a few scenes in the fighting, and then also when Finn takes off and is doing the Spider-Man thing amongst all the spires, the Inquisitor chases her,
Right.
and we're not explicitly told that they're using iron pulling. I'm still trying to learn all my terms. Iron pulling?
Steel pushing and iron pulling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems implied that that's the mode of transportation being used there. So I think we have an Inquisitor using steel and or iron and Atium, and we know they're Seekers. Yeah, I think we're firmly in Mistborn territory.
Is
Well, it
seeking bronze or brass or one of those two? I don't remember.
it depends in my mind if Inquisitors follow the same rules of Allomancy that
True.
Allomancers do.
Right.
Because at least what we've learned from Kelsier is that you're either not an Allomancer, you are a misting, being able to do one,
Hmm.
or a Mistborn being able to do all of them. There's not like a you can do 2 or 3 or 4. It's either 0, 1, or all of them.
Right.
So if they are the same, then we have seen evidence. I fully agree that they would be like Mistborn.
Right.
If we're going by that rule, if they're different, then it's possible they could be able to use. They could be able to be seekers, use ATM and something else, or maybe there's like a couple, or maybe it's all. I don't actually know, but if we're going by those same rules, then yeah, they should be able to use everything.
Yeah. I just wanted to bring that up because I guess it was a decent reveal that we hadn't really talked about.
Also, something that I'm thinking about, because Inquisitors are revered as like unkillable. Like it's maybe you if you're really skilled, like if you're Kelsier and you're a super skilled Mistborn and super crafty, you can like distract an Inquisitor. But there's some steps still like almost past this like Mistborn level, which is like I can't quite understand. Like I feel like a Mistborn should be able to deal with them or something, right? So I'm assuming that there is like a Mistborn level and beyond with visitors. That's still a mystery.
Yeah.
There's
Totally a big mystery.
there's definitely something because Sazed just dropped a tree on one or some other
Yeah.
equivalent
that
destruction of
that's
some
my head
kind.
canon now. There's just a tree that just right on top of an
Yeah.
Yeah,
Inquisitor. Whether that happened or not, maybe we'll
Uh-huh.
find out. But
like a
that's what happened in my mind.
like a big old oak and branches and leaves just kind of fluttering everywhere for a little while. Anyway, the
Mm-hmm.
something is going on with these Inquisitors. Sazed was able to stop one in its tracks. It was about to kill Vin, and he takes it out of the equation completely with shattering branches. A sound like shattered branches.
Maybe he just
But
has a scary voice. Maybe
maybe,
he sounded like shattering branches.
I mean, there's a lot of
We're jumping to
possibilities here, but
conclusions.
I'm assuming a sound like shattering branches means something violent. He did something violent to this Inquisitor, stopped it in its tracks, but then later on, he makes it very clear, oh no, that didn't kill it. It didn't come anywhere close to killing it. So it seems like we've got some kind of either like regenerative powers or something here where they apparently can take a lot of damage and bounce back from it.
Anything else for part two before we talk about Sazed a little more in part three?
Just one more note that I have. As Vin and Kelsey are approaching the castle, Vin feels this oppression, this emotional and maybe even also physical pressure on her. And Kelsier explains that that comes from the presence of the Lord Ruler, almost as if like the Lord Ruler is radiating this depression almost, which I found really interesting. And I think Kelsier tells Vin to turn on
Turn our
her
copper
her
on.
copper,
Yeah.
and when she does that, it shelters her from it, at least somewhat. So I imply from that that this feeling that Vin is getting is magical, potentially allomantic in some sense of the Lord Ruler is doing something that is emanating a oppressive sense, force, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what to make of that,
Yeah.
but it's weird.
I found it more interesting that Copper solved it as opposed to
Yeah,
she felt like a depression approaching the creepy castle. Like approaching the creepy castle, I feel like would be gloomy to start,
right.
but then Kelsey's like, "Oh yeah, just burn your copper. You probably should have your copper on anyway, but just burn your copper, and then that solves it." So that would imply that
Yeah.
there is something specific there.
And what if, back to our other discussion, what if maybe that's the byproduct of burning atium all the time? Like if
Okay,
you burn atium just a little bit, nobody's going to notice. But for some reason, if you burn atium 24/7 for years, you start to take on this oppressive, emotionally black cloud type eminence
okay.
somehow, maybe.
Are you saying that it would just be like coincidence that they were approaching Creedic Shaw right after they did their ATM tutorial, and so they mistook one cause for the other?
Maybe. I'm tying it more of to the theory of where's all the atium going?
Oh,
Maybe the
okay,
Lord Ruler is burning it all. Maybe a symptom of burning atium all the time is you start to emanate this depression from you somehow.
okay.
And other allomancers can sense that as they get closer.
Elliot, do you have a theme for part two?
I do. And just like part one, it's not quite as intertwined and tying into like all the different plot lines. Really only kind of have one plot line anyway in this book.
True.
But theme of part two is I wrote down danger, and I'm mainly thinking of the hit on the crew's hideout with all the blood and destruction everywhere, and then this encounter with the Inquisitors here at the end. We've ratcheted up the danger factor. Not only is it we're afraid, we're living in this oppressive society, we've now learned what the Empire is capable of, and it's very dangerous.
Yeah. All right. What's up with Sazed?
Ooh, this is like top of my list of questions right now. What is up with that guy?
He drops a couple terms. Elliot, did you pick up said terms?
I picked up a few and then promptly wrote them down. He's talked before about being a keeper and what that means. He
He's a loyal guy. You can, keep him around. He's a
Yeah,
keeper.
he's a keeper.
I
Yeah, that's right.
he's a keeper.
I don't know why I've
He
never
talks
thought of that joke. I'm actually kind of upset with myself that I read this series and never once thought about that. Yeah, he's a keeper.
He specifically says he's not an allomancer, although if you were an allomancer and trying to hide it, isn't that exactly what you'd say?
Yes.
Same.
No, you'd say
I
it really sarcastically, like, "Oh yeah, I'm totally a Allomancer. Yeah, bro, totally."
I
That's what I
I
do.
didn't see any sarcasm font as I was reading, so I'm gonna assume that's not the case and
Okay.
that, he's, um I I think I believe him here because he's giving an alternative. He's talking about being a keeper. He talks about keepers being storehouses and that he uses metals to create memories.
That is the quote.
He also I have a theory. You guys ready for my theory?
I am ready for your theory.
Okay. The theory is that Sazed is Neo from the Matrix,
Okay.
or actually any character from the Matrix, really. And let me explain. He he also makes a reference to the fact that he's not just one man in that same like paragraph where he's talking about the metals to create memories. And let's see, he also yeah, there's one more bit of evidence here. Yeah, metal mines.
Mm-hmm.
So he makes a comment about metal mines and something about storing information. So here's what I think. I think we might have some kind of like hive mind thing going on with keepers
Okay.
potentially. where if you store a memory in a metal mind, you can then share that metal mind with other keepers. So
Okay.
that could be how Sazed has all this knowledge. And this is how he knows 172 languages and 163 religions or whatever it is. He didn't study all those, but somebody did and put them in a metal mind. And then here's where the Matrix reference comes in. He just has to download that data. He's plugged into the Matrix and he can just be like, "Oh, I need kung fu. Download the kung fu file." And they go over to the bookshelf and they pull out the kung fu disc and they stick it in and download, and he goes like this and says, "I know kung fu." And so he can do that for, whatever he wants to know. If he needs to know a language, he just kind of accesses that metal mind and boom, there he has it.
I like it. I think that's pretty cool. Could that work with Allomancy? Can you say download, you know, download thugs?
I Excellent question. My first thought is I wonder if the answer is no. I wonder if this downloadable information is purely knowledge. So like if there's anything that it's based on knowing how to do it, you can he can download it. But I wonder if allomancy is more genetic
That's what I was gonna
or
say. The distinction has to be is it's
yeah,
like because you can't teach someone who's not an allomancer how to allomance,
right.
right? But I didn't know if this like there's
I think
obviously
that's the
some.
second time you used alamance as a verb, and I really hate it. Alamance
You're
is not a
welcome.
verb.
I love it.
Yeah, I love allomancing. It's one of my favorite pastimes, actually. I love shooting some coins in my spare time. Anyways, I'm really good at tiddlywinks. Sorry. Um, okay. uh, anyways, this does seem to be some form of maybe magic or something involved, especially if what you're saying is true, Elliot, of like you can like download this from a hive mind or something. That sounds like a magical, thing. uh, I don't know why that's funny
Or
to me. And so I'm wondering if it would be possible to gain allomancy in that way. If so,
yeah,
then he would just be like a Mistborn, right? Because giving I assume the wealth of knowledge he can pull from, he would be able to have gotten all of them. So I would maybe could reason out of that's not possible.
I agree based on the very limited knowledge I have of magic on this planet.
That still doesn't explain how he dropped a tree on an Inquisitor, though.
Oh, it very much does not explain how he dropped a tree on an Inquisitor. There are so many questions left here, which is why I said he's top of my list. And I'm also going out on a limb on this quite a bit,
Wow.
and that thank you, Paul.
I can't believe
I'm
you just
just,
said that.
I'm just editing out the last 5 minutes of the podcast, and we're just gonna do a skip. Oh man,
Eh, I'm
Wow, Trevor's
I'm
trying to pull
grasping it.
weeds over here.
I'm
Sorry.
I'm grasping at straws to kind of come up with my downloading kung fu from the Matrix theory. I have again like one sentence to base this entire theory off of. So I'm fully ready for this not to be the case, and that metal minds and keepers are something different. But this is everything that went through my head when I read these two sentences.
sounds good. There's a line that Sazed tells Vin, and he says, "The Lord Ruler hunts keepers relentlessly, even more so than Allomancers. The Lord Ruler can handle the existence of Allomancers in Mistborn with among the nobility at least, but he hunts keepers relentlessly." What did you guys think of that line and the implications there?
We already got a hint at this before at some point that keepers are, or was it? I think it was in direct reference to keepers, that they are controlled or hunted by the Lord Ruler, that they are a powerful force, and that the Lord Ruler does not want them off unchecked. I don't know.
I
Seems par for course for this Lord Ruler person for me.
yeah, I it just makes me wonder if the spread and saving of ideas and history is more of a threat to the Lord Ruler than shooting coins from your hand. Which is just an interesting concept to brew on why that would be the case.
It is. And I can think of this in two ways. There's the danger that the knowledge itself might bring, which would be, is the Lord Ruler afraid of something in the past?
Right.
Or is there something in the history of this culture or this planet that he does not want the general populace knowing? And keepers having access to all these stored memories could be, a dangerous way to uncover said information. But then there's the other side, the more like metaphysical side, which is somehow Sazed is wielding his powers in a very physical way.
Yeah.
He just dropped a tree on an equipment. He probably did not drop a tree. We got to stop using that.
No,
as the example.
that is canon until proven otherwise.
Sazed has done something very powerful in the physical realm with the powers that he has. So purely, it's not just knowledge. It's not just ideas. Ideas are powerful, very very powerful.
Yeah.
But Sazed clearly has physical power, perhaps based on this knowledge somehow. So maybe the Lord Ruler is afraid of that. Maybe the
Yeah.
Lord Ruler is afraid of, oh man, if a whole army of people that can drop trees on people with their knowledge could overthrow me.
That was a great sentence.
I, that's all the information I have so far.
That was a great sentence. Man, this episode's wild. Okay. And then we end chapter 16 with a conversation back towards Kelsier between Sazed and Vin. And Vin mentions, or Sazed mentions, I don't know, one of them brings up the betrayal from before. And Sazed says, yeah, it's commonly accepted among the crew that it was Mare, Kelsier's old wife, who was the betrayer the last time around, 3 years ago or whatever it was. Ellie, what was your reaction to that?
It's potentially putting in jeopardy another one of my early theories or thoughts, which was that we would see that betrayer again, or that betrayer is like actively still working on in the scene in the story. But as far as we know, that we've been told, Mare died
Right.
in the pits,
Within
and
sight of
Kelsier was
Kelsier, yeah.
right, and he was there, and so that might squash my theory that the betrayer is still on the loose. I don't know.
Anything else before we get into other Cosmere spoilers? No? Okay. If you have not read the Stormlight Archive or other Brandon Sanderson things that the Cosmere or that the podcast has covered, I would suggest that you leave. Okay, question I've been.
Wait, me first. It's not a question. It's really quick. It'll make you upset that you gave me the mic, and then we'll move on. All I can think about this whole time is I am a stick. I am a stick talking about our tree that
The
got
branch
smashed.
they got.
The tree.
It has to canonically be the same tree.
The stick, yeah.
Like the stick came from that tree, and it is so unwavering to Shalon because it's been used for so much. It's so tired.
The potential of the stick is so high. Yes.
It's been broken before, and it's just so hurt that, of course, it's not going to listen to Shalon. So I think this is a canonically confirmed backstory for
the stick. Yeah.
The stick, yeah.
The
stick is unwilling to move, unwilling to change, unwilling to break,
and
because it's been hurt before.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the stick a little bit more, though, because on Roshar, trees aren't really a thing. I mean, there are some trees on Roshar, but most fauna on Roshar are floral. Flora? Flora, thank you. Most flora on Roshar is buddy and little, like, coral-esque, not branch-esque. So where did this stick come from?
I mean, this obviously has to be that stick because also, think about how many high storms come through Roshar and like the amount of weathering that would happen. This has to be a resilient stick possibly from another planet, possibly not even from Roshar.
Does that mean Scadrial is to the east of Roshar in
Of course.
Shadesmar and it blew over? Okay, got
You
it.
were reading my mind.
Yeah.
The winds coming in a westward way obviously brought this
Scadrial is
stick
the
in.
origin. The origin.
Yes.
Scadrial sends high storms to Roshar, confirmed.
Yes. Whew, wow. Okay. So I'm so grateful for these Stormlight parts that we just get to uncover. See, Elliot, this is what you've been missing out on. I mean, me and Elliot have been holding in that secret for a long time. We've just been waiting for the big stick reveal. Man.
It's like at the end of Rhythm of War when I finally got to talk to you guys about all my theories. Okay, listen up. There's a stick.
I'm with it. It makes perfect sense, right? Shallan is trying to convince the stick that fire is cooler. It's like, dude, you can be fire. Think of how cool that is. And the stick is like, Shallan, I have taken out an Inquisitor by falling from the skies, being thrown by a man, saving the day for Vin, who then goes on to save the planet or whatever else he's going to do. You have no idea how cool it is
I
to be
am
a
stick.
I am a stick.
That
Yes.
is, I mean, I
Or
can
confirmed.
respect the stick's pride for sure on that. Like you're right. Like, who else can say that they've combat an Inquisitor and lived to see the day? Like the end of the day, of course, he's
One.
gonna go retire to a peaceful life on Roshar, unbothered by filthy.
Don't choke on your
unbothered.
tea.
So watching Elliot laugh actually cracked me up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Headcanon confirmed. 100%.
I
Yes.
love that the fact that the part that cracked Elliot was the word peaceful life on Roshar, and that was the funny part as opposed to
retiring to Roshar. Yeah. Exactly. Great.
Oh man, I don't know if I can top that with my actual serious prediction here that's coming up. Okay. We started the episode talking about Atium. Atium powers and what Atium powers seem to allow you to glimpse into the future. What else have we seen that lets you glimpse into the future?
Renar and
Okay.
corrupted Truth Watcher.
An unmade, maybe.
Mayhaps.
What else? Not where my brain went.
Not where my brain went either. I went to Caravangian first.
Not where my brain
And
went either.
His diagram, his whole I've seen the end and it's useless speech.
Mm-hmm. My brain.
Where did your brain go?
My brain went to Six of the Dusk. When AVRs give you a glimpse briefly into the future on potential deaths that are about to happen to you. I'm wondering if there's a tie between AVR and Atium.
You have to stew on that for a while. I mean, ultimately, there's a bit of a side tangent from what you're saying there, but I'm trying to tie our magical powers to a shard of some kind.
Yeah.
I'm still really struggling with that. And I'm trying to figure out if Atium is perhaps our key there. Can I take these magical powers that we're learning about, Atium specifically, and that ability to see into the future, and tie that to attributes of a shard? And I think you've told us. I think you told us at some point the name of the shards plural.
It was
Scadrial.
told to you at one point. I will not tell you now because it is extremely relevant. But you were told at one point, and I would advise not to go looking for it.
Yeah, I wasn't. I have some words on the tip of my brain that are either like those or close, but I'm not going to share them because I'm trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together the correct
without
way.
them, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to piece together the elements of this and the abilities that are going to tie back to a where's all this magic coming from.
I think it was Ace in our Discord who talked about this to me. They were saying that specifically you, Elliot, are approaching Mistborn in such a unique way because you are looking for the shard, but the majority of the Mistborn readers don't know what that means, has never heard of such a term at this point.
Right.
So it is such a strange way to approach Mistborn of looking for the shard as opposed to looking for, the price of allomancy specifically, because that's all we've learned.
And I will say a very obvious prediction to make is that the Lord Ruler is a vessel
Right.
of
Right.
said shard, that they are wielding their power and potentially have immortality because they are the body that's housing a shard. So that's maybe option number one on the list right now.
All right. Another thing we talked about is metal mines and downloading data. Data? Datum?
Um,
Who
Datum.
else can download data on a whim?
I did not think about this at all until you typed those words into the outline, and then the unanswer jumped out at me, and that name was Hoyd, because
Not where my
we
brain
have
went.
recently, very recently, had an issue with Hoyd's
Yes.
ability to download or not download memories he thinks he has in his
Yes.
possession.
I feel like anytime we talk about the end of Rhythm of War, Paul like has an epiphany because he doesn't remember the end of Rhythm of, like specifically Todium in our Stormlight Current episode. You're like, I completely forgot about that. But
Yeah.
yes, this is Rhythm of War epilogue that you're talking about, right, Elliot?
Yes, yes. So Hoyd has separated memories onto stuff he's carrying
Yes.
through potentially breaths related powers
That was the
somehow.
conclusion we came to. I don't know if that's spelled out for us or if that's just
Yeah,
presumed. I don't
I think
remember how we came
no.
to that.
Yeah, I think so. I think that was kind of my own guesstimation and our like speculating. I don't actually know how. I
Doesn't
guess.
doesn't the cloak change color and that's why we talked about that?
or something, yeah. Anyway, not sure if that's a similar ability, or maybe we're confusing things, and whatever theory I'm spinning here about metal mines is just that's what Hoyd was doing
Yeah,
instead of the breaths thing.
maybe. My brain went to Shy in the Emperor's Soul. She can stamp herself to learn Kung Fu, right?
Literally, yeah. Yeah.
And
And finish your thought.
uh, th- brain empty. Go ahead.
You're spinning a, a lot of cogs and wheels just kicked into gear in my brain because I actually went back and reread Emperor's Soul while we were on our break not too long ago. And it specifically talks about how when she writes those soul stamps and when she applies them to herself, it it gives her memories of a past life she didn't live.
Yeah.
But it's not just the abilities that she takes on. It's the full life of that person.
Yep.
She has memories, she has feelings and emotions and relationships that go back beyond, the point of writing that stamp. So that could absolutely be relevant.
That
And
that
there's the whole like interesting conversation between Shy and Hoyd, which was even like cut,
yes.
which was
Yes.
very like that was one of my favorite things that you showed us, Trevor, that we read. Like that like felt life changing to me. I don't know fully why, but it was really, really cool. And so I mean, I think that would be pretty sick if I don't know. Maybe Hoyd just has an extra in case of emergency Hoyd stamp, you know, that he got or could get from Shy or something, but I don't know. But I don't. Do you think this has any relationship to our Mistborn? Do we think Sazed is using soul stamps? That
Mm,
seems like it'd be a stretch, especially for this time in Brandon Sanderson's writing, right?
right.
I don't know the lineage
And
of when that was written.
it is pretty easy to meta think it and say no, just simply because Emperor's Soul is after Mistborn.
Mm-hmm.
But it's easy. It's relevant to pull that in because of similar rules that they're going to play by, right? Where you can't always have these powers. You have to stamp them on yourself. Maybe Sazed has a similar thing of you can't always have these powers. You have to equip a metal mind, whatever that means.
I'm having all these thoughts too, but I'm almost hesitant to spin too far down these theories just because we don't know enough yet about what these metal mines are.
Right.
At least I don't. You guys do. But I want to know. I want some more evidence. I need some more evidence before we go and spin this huge, elaborate theory that then is going to immediately fall apart one chapter later when I read something obvious about metal mines.
That has been the trend, right? We're sitting 20 minutes theorizing about something, and then Kelsey literally gives a PowerPoint presentation to Vin the next chapter. Yes.
Has happened.
Yes.
Has happened.
I think it's happened more than once. Anything else for 139, gentlemen?
Not.
All right. Let's continue reading, and we will reconvene for episode 140 next week. Thanks for joining me, Paul and Elliot.
Later.